Hello, SuperCoaches. Welcome to the preview podcast for round 11. Bye planning / origin planning is in full swing. Jet Hatton is back for the double header this week. What trades are you making?
Mate, I was gonna go no trades at all. Yeah. It's that sort of week, but I want to get Zac Hosking back in, so I'm going to get rid of Tom Gilbert, who is a chance to play Origin next week, so that doesn't really matter for my buy round number, and just get Zac Hosking straight in.
Yep, Hosking's in for me as well. I think at his price, $501,000, he could end up at $650, $700 in a couple of weeks. Plus he covers 12, covers 13. Injury history is a bit of an issue, but I still think he's way underpriced.
That's the main concern with him, but we saw he's got upside. He's scored tries playing through the middle this year, and he scores one on the edge. So the Raiders are going good, even though they had a loss on the weekend, and he should play an 80-minute role, which is positive.
Yep, he's in for me. So Marju goes to him via Dylan Lucas.
Yep.
And then I'm tossing up. I don't know if I'm going to use another trade. I really want to save some for next week. Don't want to jump the gun, but I've got Mamazelos just sitting there doing nothing and out for another probably 5 weeks. So I'm considering going him down to Riley Smith, who's now playing 80 minutes, pumping out 50 just in tackles each week. So I'm kind of tempted to make 100k off that trade, but it's definitely a luxury trade.
Yeah, we were talking about it just before, just about Riley Smith and maybe those sort of hooking options there with Jazz Tavanga playing well for Manly as well. Yeah. Riley Smith, even though I've had him for the last few weeks and I've been bagging him on the podcast, he's been pretty solid. He scored 60 last week, pretty much all just in tackles. So it's hard to knock him, and if he keeps scoring 60, he's only going to rise in price. So I like it.
Luxury trade. We'll see what happens. Might be able to pull it off later in the week. Origin selections. So we've got some predicted teams here. There's lots of big SuperCoach implications. First of all, Terrell May. If you watch rugby league as a SuperCoach, you would say that he's an absolute certainty for the Blues. One of the best front rowers in the comp this year, behind probably only Payne Haas, in my opinion. But doesn't look like he's going to make that team for the Blues. They've got Jake Trbojevic, who they desperately want to fit in there. Barnett, they need to get in there as well. Plus Payne Haas, there's a real logjam there. I don't know if Terrell May's going to make Origin.
As a diehard Blues fan, it would really kill me if Terrell May isn't in there, because as you said yesterday, you can pick him for that 60-minute role, as we've seen him all year, playing that sort of workhorse. And remember 2 years ago when the Roosters were just stacked with middle forwards, he played that impact role off the bench and was elite. So I don't get not picking him, but as a SuperCoach, it's great because we're going to have that extra numbers over the bye period.
Yeah, so it doesn't play 12, but 13 is proving to be a pretty tough round. We'll have him for then. But yeah, I think they'd be mad not to pick Terrell May because, as you say, he can just do both roles. He can play big minutes or he can be an impact guy. On to Teddy v Dylan Edwards. Looks like Dylan Edwards has won that. He just needs to stay fit and he gets that spot, which is obviously good news for SuperCoach on Tedesco. Yeah,
I'd be very surprised if Edwards didn't get first bite at the jersey, just because he's the incumbent. It's good for all Tedesco owners because obviously he covers all those major buy rounds and the mini buy rounds. So, he's a huge buy option next week if you don't have him, and I'll be looking at getting him in next week.
The real wild card both Turbo brothers, Trbojevic brothers, they can shake up the team massively because if they do pick Jake, that affects someone like Terrell May. If they pick Tommy Turbo on the wing, which is the most likely position because you've got Latrell and Stephen Crichton essentially locked in as the centres. If he gets named for Origin, that means that one of Lomax or Brian To'o has to miss out on that team, which would be huge.
We'll have Lomax because there's no way in hell that Brian To'o isn't in the side. He's just he's just another front row for the Blues. So.
But Lomax was so good last year as well.
He was.
You look at the Blues team, it's pretty stacked, particularly in the back line.
Yeah, but he only gets one game to prove himself this weekend. So, but he's that aerial target, so maybe Laurie sees that in him, and then you have him and Turbo as big aerial targets for Cleary and Moses to kick to. I'd love if Tom didn't get picked because I think he's a huge chance to just go straight from Kalen Ponga to him next week because he's got a high break even. There's every chance that it won't cost you anything to go Kalen Ponga to Turbo next week if he doesn't get picked.
Bargain price. So if he doesn't get picked, big SuperCoach ramifications there. Connor Watson, do we think he plays? I think he will because he's an incumbent, but you've got Ryan Pappenhausen who could He's killing it and could come on and play that Matty Bowen role that he used to play for Queensland back in the day.
I think Connor Watson's locked in just because he covers so many positions at 14. We saw even when he played for the Knights, he can play fullback, he can play in the halves, play hooker obviously, in the middle, back row. Doesn't matter where it is, he's just missed to fix it, and he brings that culture. So as good as Pappy's playing, I'd be very surprised if Watson wasn't picked.
Yeah, I think Connor Watson makes it, which means he misses 5 of 8 rounds over Origin.
He's a massive seller.
Plus, he had the bye last week, so a lot of people sold last week, which was probably the correct move. On to Angus Crichton. Surely he has to play.
Yeah, well, I sold him last week, so I hope he gets named. Okay. He's got a high break even. That's the only reason why I sold him, and he's not playing that as good as what he was last year, but he was player of the series last year. Yeah. It's just it's a question of whether he gets named on the bench or if he's starting, just because of how good Hudson Young is going. So he'll be named. It'll just be whereabouts.
Yep. So that means he misses 5 of 8 as well over Origin. So definite sell if you own him. Corey Horsburgh. So we're expecting him to be named. Our spies up at the Courier Mail are picking him. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, we don't yet know. But I am expecting him to be named, which is obviously bad for SuperCoach because we had him down as a number for round 12, but he's just played so well. I think he's scored a spot in that team.
Yeah, I think he's a reluctant sell if you do have him, just because as Sav said yesterday when he was on, that Zach Hosking was starting to eat into his minutes quite a bit. Yeah. He goes back into the back row now, so it's going to see Corey's minutes go up, but not having him for round 12 is going to hurt, so I would sell him if I had him.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that he's the 4th most sold player this week, but I'll be waiting until Origin team's picked to make that decision. On to what are we doing with Ponga? He's going to play fullback for the Maroons with Reece Walsh injured. Probably would have scored that spot anyway, even if Reece Walsh was fit. What are you going to do with him? Well,
it's all going to come down to what happens with the Blues team if Tommy gets picked, because I'd just trade him straight to Tommy next week. If I'm going to hold Ponga this week, even though he's in my guilty pleasure later, but he was pretty disappointing on the weekend. But the week before he turned up, so I've just been so solid with him, so I'm going to stick with him. And if Turbo's there next week, I'll move to him. But I don't think there's any other options really.
Yeah, I mean he's just bottomed out at such a price that it's hard to really do anything with Ponga. I'm kind of considering going him up to Tedesco, but that's going to cost a lot of money, which is kind of why I'm going with Riley Smith this week. Yeah, potentially, even though he's not that good of a cheapie. The popular move that you should avoid.
Mine is just trading out Nathan Cleary. Quite a few people are doing it. Obviously, he doesn't play this week and he won't play next week either. But you're going to have to waste a trade to get him out. He then has a Sunday 4 p.m. game, so you'd think he'll back up. Penrith aren't going that good, so they need him. And they play against Parramatta that week. Everyone who doesn't have him is going to just be hating themselves when watching that game. And then the week after, they play Sunday 4 p.m. again against the Tigers, so who just conceded 64 points on the weekend. So if you get him out, you're going to want to get him in 2 weeks' time, and it just is a waste of 2 trades, I think.
Yeah, Cleary's staying for me for sure. I've got decent cover there in Nico Hines. On to the guy who I reckon is well over-owned is Corey Allen. Frank was just talking before about bringing him in. I don't think he's a good cheapie at all because he gets 1 price rise, then there's a buy, 2 if Pilotu comes back as well. So I don't think he's going to stay in that team for long. I've liked what I've seen from him. I love seeing him back in the NRL from that ACL injury. But I just don't think this is a good one for SuperCoach.
Yeah, well, I think he's a good cheapie if he had good job security, which he doesn't. Yeah. So that's why I hate the Corey Allen move. But if we get word that Tui Pilotu's behind schedule, he could be a buy still in the future. So
you were saying to Frank before, just get Fletcher Hunt in straight away.
Just get him in, yeah. Well, we got to get him added to the game first.
Hasn't been added to the game yet. By the time you're watching this podcast, he will have been added. So anyone who gets named who isn't in the game gets added on Wednesday mornings, if you ever want to know that. So Fletcher Hunt will be in the game by the time you're watching right now. Guilty pleasure. You mentioned it before. What's yours?
Mine's just holding Kalen Ponga and whacking the VC on him.
Yeah.
So
I've got the VC on him as well.
He's just got so much upside, and I've just got to hold him. And I'm
Yeah, it's Origin time as well. You want a good game under his belt.
Yeah, they got a nice
Origin.
match up this week.
He's not the sort of bloke who can play a full season at full tilt, but now that it's Origin time, I think he's gonna fire up. Good matchup. He's at home as well. I think where he's got a good record. For me, it's Corey Horsburgh. Like I feel like there's a voice telling me to sell, but I'm just going to wait and see what happens this week. As you say, there's a good chance that he goes pretty well this weekend with Hosking now on the edge, so more minutes for the horse.
Yeah, he's definitely a sell next week if he gets named. But yeah, if you have him this week, I wouldn't sell him this week.
Welcome to this week's Best Bets powered by Better. What have you got for us?
Oh, it's a bit of a homer pick this week, Tom. I'm going the Sharks 1-12 at Shark Park. It's paying $3.60. I've got a bit of logic about it. Sharks will be coming off a brilliant win at Brookvale Oval on the weekend. They haven't played many games at Shark Park this year. Melbourne are 5-0 at home at Amy Park, but they're actually 1-3 away. And two of those teams have been the pretty bad sides against. Obviously, Sharks aren't a bad side, but they got beat by the Dolphins at Suncorp and the Dragons as well. So I like the Sharks and the Bermuda Triangle that they call the Shark Park is.
The reason I laughed when you said that is not because you're a massive Sharks fan. It's because I've got basically the same bet. Just the Sharks to win, $2.25. It's paying. What's yours paying?
$3.60.
$3.60. So you get a bit more for the 1-12.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it for the exact same reasons you said. We should have spoken before this segment about who we're backing, but I like it. I'm into it.
There you go.
What is gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Heaps of questions coming through, lots of sledges as well over the last little bit, but some questions too. Jamal Fogarty. Is he a better replacement for Cleary than Nicho Hynes?
Well, he's playing good. It's hard to knock him this year. Yeah. We were talking about it yesterday. He's not up over 700k out of a fluke.
Yeah.
He's playing the best footy of his life. Maybe that's because he was playing for a contract.
Yes.
But he kicks goals. Canberra score a lot of points. I don't hate it, but I wouldn't do it. Yeah, it just doesn't feel right.
Well, Nico's just at that price where it's a really juicy price for him, whereas Fogarty is probably close to his peak price for the season.
And I don't think he has the upside of Nicho Hynes either.
Definitely not. Thoughts? How many trades do you have left?
That's a good question. I have 26 trades left with one boost, so I've burnt through quite a bit of them. That's why I wanted to not trade at all this week, but I think I've got to use one. Hopefully I don't talk myself into two, but I'm going to have to save trades at some point. How many you got?
Yeah, I got 28 with one boost left, so I'm very skinny on the boosts. What are you thinking?
These are two blokes that I sort of wanted to bring in this week, but obviously need to save trades, so I might bring them in next week. They're two players from the Manly Seagulls who a lot of people aren't talking about. Everyone wants to bring in Garrick over this bye period, but the left side of Manly really impressed me last week against Cronulla. They were tearing us apart. And Toltakula scored 2 tries. He's got a 5-round average of 79. So he's absolutely flying. And you've also got Lehigh Hopewade in there, who had a low score 2 weeks ago against Penrith. So he's got a high break even. But there's every chance he plays fullback next week with Tom Trbojevic out. So I think he's a massive buy next week if he gets picked. But I like Toltakula as an option at the price.
I own Cooler in draft and I'm extremely happy. He's got me home a couple of weeks in a row, so I'm really liking him. He's pretty much untackleable sometimes. Like, how do you tackle that?
I know, it was frustrating watching him on the weekend just as a Sharks fan, but he's got so much talent. He's quick. No one really talks about him anymore. They used to when he was a young fella, but he's just so elite and he's just flying under the radar and he's low-key averaging nearly 70 points for the year. So.
Yeah, definitely under the radar. Plus, his dual position as well. You can pick him
up.
There
you go.
Which is really handy, particularly for draft, not so much for SuperCoach, because your fullback is going to be stacked anyway. I reckon Karaz is still only 16%.
Really?
So he's still a pod for mine. He's not popular this week for some reason.
Well, it's just because he's so expensive, I think.
He's expensive, and I think people might be thinking that he's going to play Origin. That's not going to happen. I mean, Zac Lomax and Brian Tu'u are likely going to miss out on that team. So Karaz is behind them. I don't think he's going to play Origin, so you can lock him in for next week. The biggest issue I see, other than the price, is that he doesn't play 13, and 13 is really tough.
Yeah. Do you have him?
No.
I think he's a must-have, Karaz. He's so good. He he accumulates so many SuperCoach points. He always looks to offload every time he runs it, and the amount of times he gets those over 8 metre runs, which just add up over time, he's going to get 70 to 80 every week with that upside to go 150 like he did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm kind of tempted, and I've got the cash, but I just think Hosking at that price is too good.
Yeah,
so
well, you got to have.
I can swing Lucas down to the back line, so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to go Hosking instead.
He won't play
Just
outside Stephen Crichton over that Origin period either, which has been so good for him.
Yeah, indeed. I also think Keon Kalamatangi is an awesome buy, only at 4%. Not this week if you're a head-to-head player, but for around 13 if you're an overall player. And your mate Britton Nickera, 542k.
Yeah, he's slowly starting to improve this year, and he's been close to going through for a couple more tries. He got ankle tapped against the Tigers a few weeks ago, and he just runs that hard line under Nico, and the Sharks' right edge just really starting to fire, and he gets those tries. His base is a bit lower this season, which is a negative, but the Sharks have a great bye coverage, and Britain's been one of those elite 2RFs over the last few years.
So Larkin King Togia is the most popular option this week. You bought him in, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah,
I bought him in
his
last
first game,
week.
yeah.
He's looking pretty good. Like the first game, 70-odd points with 2 try assists. A little bit down on that, but it was a tough matchup against the Warriors. The Warriors are a good team this year. Got a nice little try assist in there. The runs were down, though, which was a bit of an issue for me. I don't think he's a must-have cheapie. He's far from a must-have cheapie, but he's certainly the best we got this week.
He's far from a must-have just because of how much cash we've generated at the start of the year, but he's so nice to free up cash. And as you said yesterday, he's going to get dual.
He will get
He'll
dual.
get the
As
dual,
long as
so-
he starts at halfback this weekend,
Which we'll
he will
expect
get
he will,
dual,
yeah.
which is where he's been named, yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like some weeks, I'm considering playing him this week just because I know he's got that upside. So I like him as a buy, and he frees up a ton of cash. So yeah, I understand why he's the most traded in.
The next most popular is Corey Allen, but we've already talked plenty of people out of him. Hugo Savala is still really popular. So he had the bye last week. You still get a good break even this week. Covers around 12, but then doesn't cover a lot of those minor buys. We call them like 13. I still think he's a handy purchase if you need someone, particularly given the dual positioning.
Yeah, well, he didn't go up that much at his first price rise because he had a few 20s to start it, but then he went 55 and 60 or something. So he's still got a minus 30-something break even. And he kicked goals, so obviously he won't kick goals with Santa Smith back this week, but I like him as a buy. He's got 2 RF halfback duels, so yeah, I've got him, and I'm a happy owner.
Riley Smith, so I mentioned him before. Look, if you miss the boat on him, I don't think it's the worst move to go down to Riley Smith this week. If you've got someone like Mamazelos just sitting there collecting dust, him down to Riley Smith frees up over 100k, which can be used really well next week, because next week is massive for SuperCoach, obviously, given it's the first big buy.
Yeah, well, it's a hard period. If it was round 6, I'd be sitting here saying Riley Smith is not an option, because if you had Mamazelos there at 400k, I'd be suggesting to upgrade to a guy like Harry Green or Connor Watson. But just because it's that period where those guys are going to be picked for Origin, Riley Smith's sort of borderline cheapie now. He's 340,000. Makes a lot of tackles. Yeah, that extra cash will come in handy next week when we've got an extra trade to use as well.
Yeah, he covers next week too. So and 13, so it gets you through the next two buys. Loco Pacifica Tonga, what did you think of him on
he was
debut
very impressive.
for the Dragons?
He was very impressive, and I was even more impressed with the crowd that was there cheering him on. That looked awesome. He's a big boy, isn't he? Played okay minutes, I think. The job security is good there because Toby Couchman's out for quite a while now, as is Emre Gula. So I think we'll get a few price rises out of him, and maybe when Dimitri Valmunga peaks in a few weeks' time, we can get about 200k going down to Loco Pacifici Tonga. Yeah,
they've got that buy in there, so don't go yet, but certainly keep him on your radar. And then Savs mentioned this yesterday, but Jacob Safidi at only 371k. Not bad.
Oh, it's awkwardly priced at 371k. You can't really. You've got to downgrade someone to get to him, and you wouldn't want to downgrade a Tino or a Terrell May, Payne Haas.
Yeah.
Those type of guys.
Maybe a Nafahu you could go. Yeah. Or Corey.
But I'd just go to Pacific Tonga and you make another 170k out of it. So,
or just run no cheapies at prop, which is my plan for us.
Yeah, I will not be doing.
Such a red hot position.
I feel disgusted doing that. So I'll have one there.
SuperCoach Plus is $29.95 for the year. All the stats, all the projections, or you can get code for $59 for the entire season, $1 a week. Just lock that in. Captaincy this week, you've mentioned VC on Ponga. I agree 100% on that. Only VC'd by 21% of the top 10% of SuperCoaches.
Well, there you go.
So it's quite I think that'll go up, but still, it's I wouldn't say it's a pod move, but you'd think he'd be higher than that.
Yeah, I would have thought he'd be the most popular, just because of where his game is positioned and, the popular captains like Drinkwater and that play on the Saturday night. So you need to find an early captain, but that's who I'm going to captain is Scotty Drinkwater up in Townsville against Manly, 3 tons in a row.
Yep, he's very
awesome.
He's very popular, and when he's playing at home, he always goes well.
Yep.
It'd be interesting to dig up the stats on what his scores are like at home compared to elsewhere, because they'd be a lot higher, surely.
Yeah, I don't think it matters though. He hasn't had a low score all year. His low scores might be 70 when he's away from home. So I just love Scotty Drinkwater. I can't captain Pappenhausen against the Sharks either.
I was about to say, so he's at 41%.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of people who haven't changed it from last week when he ended up somewhere near 60% captaincy. But against the Sharks at Shark Park, I think that's a tough matchup. If Pappenhausen is playing at home, you captain him no matter what. But this week, I can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, that's my rule. Amy Park, I'll captain Pappenhausen, but I'll never captain someone against my own team either. Yeah. And especially when we're going as good as we are, I couldn't captain him, especially with the Drinkwater looming.
Any love for Payne Haas at 16%?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't have him, so.
Sorry, I didn't mean.
Yeah, don't have him, but I don't hate it. It looks like a tricky week where if you get a 90 captain, you'll be really happy with. So I don't hate the Payne Haas or Terrell May.
There's no real standout option this week. No. I agree. So you could go safe. I haven't done it yet this year. I don't think I will.
Yeah, it's just too boring.
Yeah, it's very boring. Teddy is against the Dogs, so that's a really tough matchup. I'd be avoiding him. Nico Hines is against the Storm. I'm just avoiding that game altogether for the captaincy. And then, as you said, Ponga versus Parramatta. Would you go the C on him? Straight C first up?
It ruins your weekend if your captain goes bad on the first game of the round. It happened to me a few weeks ago. It just sucks. I think about Carraz as a captain against the Roosters, just because he's safe. Like, everyone talks about Payne Haas being safe, but Carraz, he bases so high. So if you got Carraz, I'd even throw the VC on him.
We'll take some questions to finish the show. How do I trade Greg Marzhew for Hosking? So you'll need a dual position player like, let's say, Bo Firma or Dylan Lucas in the back row, and then you can switch them during the trade. Just use the S button during the trade. Yep,
you just got to have Dylan Lucas in your back row. You can't have him in the centre.
Yeah, correct. And when will the new Knights winger be added? Are you going to buy him straight? Like, are you going to get in there?
Oh, I'm going to buy him next week, just because I want to. I've got a lot of centre wings with a low break even, so I want to keep that price rise going. But I think he's a star, as I said yesterday. I really think he could be in the Knights team for the whole year.
Yeah, I'm definitely keen to watch him. Keen to watch that mullet floating around.
Have you looked up his highlights yet? He'll play fullback next week, and he'll score big.
Yep. All right. You heard
he reminds me of like how Fletcher Sharp plays. Just he runs the ball. Yeah.
From Jet Hatton.
Yeah, Frank, clip this up and chuck it up on socials next week when he goes big. So, yeah, Fletcher Hunt is a big player for the future.
The crystal ball with Jet Hatton. We should have a new segment. Big thanks, mate. Big thanks to Frank, our producer, Harry over here as well. We'll catch you for the late mail show tomorrow.